there. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. My name is Woody Kingdom, and I'm honored to represent the Blake Alumni Board, which sponsors these events known as Breakfast with Blake. Some of you were here in February. We had a terrific breakfast with Michelle Tafoya, who is just back from the Super Bowl, where she was on the sidelines and told us about her experiences with NBC Sunday Night Football, which was a lot of fun. Looking forward, next month we're going to have Class of 79. John Wright will be speaking to us about his experiences living in Hong Kong, in Asia, over the last 30 years. And in June, we'll gather at the Minicata Club with head of school and staff. So put those on your calendar. Well, today our guest is the class of 1955 speaker in residence, Dr. Ken Ginsburg. The doctor is a pediatrician specializing in adolescent medicine at the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. Dr. Ginsburg says he practices social adolescent medicine. His goal is to give parents, teachers, and professionals tools and practical approaches to prepare children and teens to thrive. I've got 2 kids out of high school. I've got 1 in. She's only got 2 more years as a teenager, and this talk is coming about 10 years too late for me. So, with books like, with titles like Raising Kids to Thrive, Building Resilience in Children and Teens, Letting Go with Love and Confidence. Unfortunately, there's still a little time left for me because with my daughter being a junior and having just returned from a college trip last weekend with her mother. Another book, Less Stress and More Success, a new approach to guiding your teen through college admissions and beyond. It's on order at Amazon next week. So, after perusing through these books, I can't wait to devour them. However, I realized that I've bitten off more than I can chew back before actually 3 of the books from Amazon, so I'm hoping you can condense it all for us here in the next 30 minutes. Dr. Ken Ginsburg.
So I've really had an amazing couple days here. I've spoken to all the kids from 6th grade up. I've spoken to teachers. I've spoken to social justice organization. I've spent time with counselors, and I am overwhelmingly impressed with this school. Sometimes I come to schools. Oh, by the way, I have to say I'm particularly excited because one of the colleagues that I most respect in the country who does social adolescent medicine and adolescent nursing in the world is here. So I'm excited about that. She's a parent of one of the parents. Sometimes I go to schools, and my issue is about how can we get kids to thrive in the modern world despite all the stresses? How can we make it so that they're going to be authentically successful? And sometimes I go to a school, and my job is that some administrator has brought me in because the school needs a cultural change. And my job is to kind of wake people up to what is happening to this generation and tell them how the culture has to change. Here, very different experience. What I can tell you definitively, having been to many, many of the most elite schools in the country, is that you guys are doing it right. You guys understand the culture you're supposed to create. You are making kids stretch. You are challenging them. You are working on making them uncomfortable so that they can thrive in the future. You're doing it right, but that doesn't mean it's working. Right? So the school knows what to do. The challenge is that you exist in a broader culture, in which case your kids are still feeling anxious and your parents are still on the treadmill feeling as if they don't get their child into this college or that college, as defined by U.S. News and World Report as a good match for them, then their kids are going to fall behind. So your school knows what to do, but the cultural change still needs to occur. All right? And so what I've done is try to, really, I didn't come up with ideas that I don't think your school already has, honestly. I think I was a catalyst to get people excited, to get people to say this is a moment in time when we really have to think about this. So let's begin just kind of talk about what it takes for young kids, for people to thrive. We have to begin by defining success. So if you look at the child before you and you define success by saying, how is this child going to be successful? then you're going to make a fundamental mistake, which is you're going to focus on two things. How happy is this child? And what bumper sticker or sweatshirt do I get to wear when they're a senior? All right? And when we do that, we actually undermine success in a big way. All right? First of all, it's very easy to make a child happy. You make a 4-year-old happy by giving them a cookie. All right? You make a 12-year-old happy by giving them a bike. You make a 16-year-old happy by giving them a car, and you shouldn't. Okay? But it's easy to make kids happy. But let's really define what we need to do. And this is the mantra that we decided as a group this school was going to move forward. What am I doing as I'm raising my 35-year-old adult? If you really think about that, and if you really say, who am I creating? And will they be successful as an adult? Then everything changes. Yes, a 35-year-old should be happy. But what does that happiness look like? It looks like having meaning in your life. It looks like having a sense of purpose. That's what happiness looks like. What else do we need? We need our kids to be committed to justice. We need our kids to be empathetic, to be compassionate, to look at another human being and rather than say, what's wrong with you, to say, how can I lift you up? That's how the world is going to change. That's how the world is going to repair. We need kids who are going to be hardworking, who are going to have tenacity, right? Who are going to look at life not as a sprint, because when you look at life as a sprint, then the game ends right there. You don't think about the consequences afterwards. You'll do whatever it takes to get to the end of the sprint, including walking on other people, tripping on other people, and cheating. We need them. And what happens, by the way, when you are running for the to get to the end of the sprint? What happens if you fall down? The game's over, right? So when you see life as a sprint, there is no room for error. When you see life as a marathon, then nobody can do it on their own. You're planning on doing something that you're not even sure you can do. You need coaching. You need lots of coaching to figure out how to get there. And you're thinking far into the future. And what happens if you fall down? Nothing. You learn how to get back up and plan to do better next time. It is a very, very different experience. What else do we need? We need kids to be creative and innovative, because all the best ideas haven't been thought of yet. And what's very clear now is that if you look at industry and you look at what they're saying about the 20-somethings, they're saying that they're very disappointed in their performance, especially the kids from the most elite schools, especially the kids who have been forced to become something to get to that next spot. They have lots of knowledge and they test very well, but they're terrified of the B+. They're terrified of thinking their way out of the box because they're afraid they're going to be condemned for it. And so it is creativity and innovation that is going to make people successful in the long run. What else do we need? We need people to have collaborative skills, because all the best ideas never come to fruition from one person, right? And collaborative skills means that when I work with you, I want you to succeed. In fact, I want to figure out how to bring out the best in you. And sometimes I'm not the guy. And I say, hey, you take this one. You take the lead, because this is your skill set that I don't have. Those are the people who are going to make it. And probably above all, you need people to be able to take constructive criticism, to be coachable, right? So that on the job, when someone, because right now, when you get a job, no one is trained for the job. No one. It doesn't exist. You train on the job. So you have to be someone who is coachable. So, and then finally, you need to be able to be resilient. Because as much as we wish we could protect our kids from everything, it's not actually even possible. All right, so let's talk about resilience briefly. It's about the ability to overcome adversity. It's about the capacity to bounce back. It's a mindset. To understand resilience, you have to understand what stress is. Because resilience is the response to stress. Stress is the fact that we all come from the jungle. We are all prey animals. And as a result, we feel like we could be under attack. And when we're under attack, our energy, all of the adrenaline goes through our body and prepares us to run from the tiger. The clearest thing is, if a tiger walks in this room, what's the first feeling you would have? Feel the sensation in your body. Butterflies, right? Boom. What is that about? I'm in my jungle chair. I see a tiger coming. And when a tiger's coming, what do I need to do? I need to jump and I need to run. Where is your blood right now? Your blood's in your belly because you just had quiche. Alright? So it's in your belly. So the feeling of butterflies is literally the blood going, whoosh, so that you can jump and run. Everything that we feel when we are stressed. One of the other things is you're not supposed to talk to the tiger. You're not supposed to, while you're running, go, is there any way we can work this out? Right? You're not supposed to be doing that. And as a result, the blood is not even in the thinking part of your brain. It is in the frog part of your brain that says, run, jump, slither away. Right? And as long as you think that an AP bio test is going to determine your life, then that blood is going to be in your frog brain, and you're going to go by. The mindset of resilience begins with what's a real tiger and what's a paper tiger. Where the bottom line being is it can't shoot your face off. It's not a real tiger. And what's the first sign of knowing I had an impact? The teacher told me yesterday that he went into his classroom. He said, listen, I'm having a bad day. There's a lot of stuff that I have to kind of work on. So if I'm not attentive today, it's not about you. Okay? And his, I think it was an 8th grade student said, really, is this going to chew your face off? Resilience is not invulnerability. I could move into each of your kids' houses. I've written a textbook on how to make kids resilient. I have 2 19-year-olds myself. Resilience is not invulnerability, nor would we want it to be. Let's go back to the beginning of the definition of success. It's about being compassionate. It's about being committed to tikkun olam, to repairing the world, right? Can we agree on that? Where does that come from? Are we genetically compassionate? It's from our experience. It's when we, our lowest times, that we need to find out that we indeed are vulnerable, and what makes us human, what makes us alive, is being able to reach to another human being and say, brother, I need a hand. Right? That is what gives it. That is where compassion comes from. So in my own life, I'm 53, I've had the best life of anybody I know. I'm the happiest guy I know. And when I was 17, I spent the whole year wanting to kill myself. I never did. And who knew, by the way, that I was that sad? Who knew that I was that close to death? Anybody? Nobody. Because it was 1979. And it wasn't cool to feel this way. And I was funny, so I could lie to a lot of people. So it was the worst of times. What have I done with my life? I spent my life raising up teenagers. And more than anything, I think we work, at Laurel especially, works on shame and stigma. Right? We work on how to work on the help-seeking process so that people can turn to someone else without shame or stigma. Thank God I'm 17. And one of the messages that I gave to your kids yesterday and to your parents the day before is for those kids who are anxious, for those kids who are sad, for those kids who are outside the box, for those kids who don't fit in, for those kids with the depth of emotions, congratulations. They're going to have the best and richest lives. All they have to learn during this, they're going to be the best bosses, the best lovers, the best husbands, the best fathers, the best mothers, when they learn to manage their emotions. So we've got to be able to talk about this. Here's the bottom line of resilience. I can tell you everything there is to know about resilience while standing on one foot. The people who make it are the people who have someone who believes in them unconditionally and holds them to high expectations. Who's that person who's supposed to have unconditional belief? It's supposed to be your parent. And when it is, then professionals are additive. And when it's not, we're critical. And what does unconditional belief mean? Is that like, dude, it's okay to do drugs? Unconditional belief means I'm not going anywhere. I believe, I love you because you are you. And I know you, and I know who you are deeply. And it's not about which sweatshirt I get to wear and say with pride where my child's going to school. It's not about the trophies you bring home. All right? And it holds you to high expectations. Is that about grades or trophies or recitals? Is that everybody needs to know that someone knows who they are. So in the case of my own girls, you know, we went through the adolescent years. They were actually incredibly easy, and my girls are delicious. But we have moments, right? But let me tell you who they are. There are the 4-year-old girls who wouldn't let us turn off the lights in the summertime in the house because there were moths inside the house. And they were worried they would get lost. So we would have to turn on the outside lights, turn off the inside lights, and we got a tractor beam flashlight to walk the moths outside to be with their grandmas. That's how delicious my girls are. And when we hold our kids to the expectations of knowing who they are in terms of character, morality, kindness, humor, kids rise and they return to us. When instead we think our high-yield interactions are about talking about grades, talking about trophies, talking about not who they are or what they reduce, kids fall apart and become incredibly anxious. That's it. The rest is commentary. That's what you need to know about resilience. Now let's talk about perfectionism. You know what I'm worried about for your school? I'm not worried that your kids are going to join gangs. I'm really not. I'm worried that your kids, because of the amount of stress that they have in their life, are going to become perfectionists. And that is the death of all the measures of success that we talked about. What's the difference? If I'm a high achiever, which is where you want your kids to be, then what happens is that kids, if this was a concert hall, and 800 people stood up, standing ovation after I performed, then the high achiever says, what a blessing it is to entertain people. What a blessing it is to do what you love, to share what you love. The perfectionist knows there's only one thing, which is that he's sitting down. That's it. Not only that, the perfectionist decides that he's the one who's the expert. And it's, I only trust his judgment, because he's the only one who saw through my imposter syndrome. The adolescence is the time to learn to fail and recover. If you do not learn during childhood how to fail and recover, you will fail during adulthood. And you need to know that now is the time where kids believe that the stakes are too high to make a mistake. What your school is getting right is that it's not buying into that, giving everybody straight A's and praising all kids. It's working to figure out how to stretch and make them uncomfortable, fall down and get back up. But it is existing in a culture where these kids are terrified of this, and your school is therefore getting a lot of pushback. Using me as an example, I'm 28 years out of medical school. All right, I am at a Ivy League medical school. I'm a full professor. The first thing that you learn on the wards in medical school, when you get into medical school, is how to read an EKG. It's the first thing you learn, because it's how you tell the difference between whether something's kind of heart disease versus something else is causing chest pain. I can't read an EKG. 28 years out of medical school. Why? Because I have an ADD. And I can't look at 12 different leads all at the same time and figure them out. I can't go methodically from one thing to another. My brain just doesn't work like that. My brain is perfect for listening to a kid, perfect for working with a kid on the street, perfect for working with an audience of 5,000 people. Easy, but not for reading an EKG. Has any child ever been hurt because I can't read an EKG? No, because I know what my limitations are. I have failures, I learned what my workarounds were. During adolescence, I learned how to use humor to get people to do my work for me. And I'm also so good at what I do that no one would say, I can't believe you can't read. This generation of kids, they're failing in the workplace. This generation of kids, a lot of them would go and they would pretend they can read EKG. That's when a disaster happens. All right? Perfectionists loathe themselves. They are afraid of a B+ because they see it as the end of their success because they're running a sprint, not a marathon. They're terrified of the D word, which is being disappointing their parents. And as a result, they don't have out-of-the-box thought, and all of those things are the death of creativity. They resent constructive feedback. Why? Because they feel like they're under attack. They feel like they are imposters. And this is the death of success. This is why we have to fight this. We have to figure out how to turn this generation around. So what happened? There's a few things that happen. But one of the things that happened is the college admissions process is insane. It is pathologic. It is artificial. It exists on making parents scared. Stanford has, brags that they have less than a 5% acceptance rate. They're not accepting fewer people. More people are applying because they're scared. That's 95% of the people who they get admissions money for, right? It is good business for the top colleges to run people scared. It also is dangerous, and they are highly aware of the danger that is happening now, and everybody's trying to figure out how to go backwards without losing their spot on U.S. News and World Report. Seriously, this is insanity, and this is where we're at right now. All right. So, how do we build a high achiever? The first thing that we do is we have to understand that we're going to stop talking in the way that the self-esteem generation talk. So here's what's gone wrong. We have we believed starting about the 80s that the best thing we could do to make people successful was to build their self-esteem, right? And To build their self-esteem, we shower praise on them all the time. We had curricula where kids would draw butterflies, and every butterfly was different and special, and the teacher was to say, Catherine, that is such a good, you're so good at yellow. Sarah, look at your dots. Mary, look at those big eyes. And then the butterflies would go up on the wall, the lessons for the day. Each of you, you're as special as a butterfly. The next day, you would cut out snowflakes, right? And, Greg, look at how unique your snowflake is. Gary, look at your snowflake. They would go up on the wall, and the lesson for the day, each of you, you're as unique as a snowflake. Parents were taught to praise every time the child did anything. You stood at the bottom of the sliding board and you said, Tommy, look at you. Good job, Tommy. Good job, Tommy. Never giving any credit to gravity. It was all about Tommy. And then what happened? We had a generation of kids who were scared of their shadow and who are incredibly anxious when they don't feel. Do you ever have those days when you don't feel special as a butterfly? Do you have those days? Well, we didn't let kids know that it was okay. So we've got to let young people make mistakes. And another thing that this school is all over is Carol Dweck's work. Carol Dweck's work is really about the second bullet. What she did is she did an enormous amount of research that proved that when you praise kids for what they are producing, it makes them terrified not to produce. Whereas when you praise them for their effort, they end up really feeling in control and powerful and not anxious. So this is, I'm trying to give you basically a 7-hour talk in half an hour. So I'm not going to summarize our research, but I will summarize what the bottom line is. What you don't want to say is, you are so beautiful. You are so good at math. You are such a good athlete. You are so good at history. You are so good at poetry. Because when you do that, you are stating a fixed state in a human being. All right? And you don't want to also focus on the results. How did you do on your math test? How many goals did you get in soccer? Did you get the first seed in the art contest, right? You don't want to do that because kids freeze. And what do they look like when they get older? They look for life. They have higher levels of anxiety and depression. They look for life partners who flatter them. They don't like doing things that they haven't been told they're good at. They see hard work as a sign that they're not naturally intelligent. All right? They hate constructive criticism because they've never felt they were as good as they've been labeled, and they get really anxious when you get close to the truth. What you should be saying is, you did this, and that therefore the results were blank. So, because you studied very hard, you did well on your math test. I love watching you play ball because when I see you out there, you're marking your man, you're looking all around, and unlike everyone else, you're just going straight for the goal. You were able to make the pass, and as a result, your friend got it in. Good job. And the questions we ask are not what was your grade, it was what did you learn out of it. It was tell me about your picture. Tell me about how you picked up your game. How do these people look like? These people look for life partners who compliment them. They have lower levels of anxiety and depression. They love hard work. They love constructive criticism, and they're willing to see outside the box. It is everything we need to have kids succeed. And your school's all over this research. But again, existing in a larger context, which is what I did the last 2.5 days, was really think about cultural change from many places. Next, we have to, really successful people, and we all know this, really successful people are good at something. And what makes them interesting is that they do other things too, right? So you're looking at seriously the most uneven guy in the world. I am as good at what I do as anybody, all right? But here's my sense of direction, for real. North. Be good, north. I have never lost because I'm always going forward. And to me, I'm always going in the right direction. I have no sense of direction. I can't change a tire. And this is why I married a farmer, right? I can't do anything except for what I do very well. And we are raising a generation of kids with a couple of lies, which is basically, kids, I want you to know that you're going to be taking the SATs in the 11th grade, and that's going to determine your life. And if you do well, then really everything's going to be handed to you on a silver platter. If you don't do well, mediocrity is the very best. which is why it's so important that you relax when you take the test. In order to get into a top college, what I need you to do is I need you to be able to show how creative you are. And that's why I didn't let you really play as a child. I set you up for music lessons when you were 2 or 3 years old. And I know that you seem to love banging those drums, Steve, and it was fun, wasn't it? But Princeton doesn't have drum. That's why you're taking the bassoon, darling. And also I want you to see how creative you are, and that is obviously what a great collaborator you are, which is why I signed you up for 2 team sports. But Rose, I want you to know that it's very important that you are captained by the senior year, so that you can show leadership skills as well. And darling, I know what a good man you are, Steve. It's very clear to me. But the problem is it's not clear on a college essay, and that's why I am sending you to Botswana for 11 days to build your education system. Am I making this up? The message that we are sending to kids is you have to be good at everything, and that's why they're terrified. Here's the message we should be sending. I expect you to work very hard in absolutely everything that you do, because if you don't work hard in everything you do, you will never trust the results. But when you work hard, I want you to understand that I want you to pay attention to the results, so that you're going to learn who you are. Like what we do now is we say, just find your passion, Mary. But the problem is that makes kids, what kids hear is, by the time you're a junior, so you can write a good essay. Finding your passion is a process, not an event. It is developmentally not possible for kids in high school to know what they want to do for their whole lives. What they can do is learn what they're good at, learn what they're not good at, and take that as grist to want to change the world. So I want you to work very hard in everything that you do. And I want you to pay attention. And if there's something that comes really easily to you, and you didn't have to work hard, but you're not that interested, but you're just a natural at it, congratulations. Take advantage of that natural strength. But that's not your career. Why is that not your career? It's not interested in it, right? It comes naturally, but you're not that interested. Suppose you work really hard at something, and you're pretty good at it, and you want to get better and better at it, and you're really super interested, and you find it fascinating, and when you get something wrong, it means that you just want to study more, and then when you try to explain your ideas to someone and they don't understand it, rather than getting frustrated, you're like, I've got to make them understand it. You've found your career. Suppose you work really hard at something and you think it's really fun, but you're not that good at it, then what I want you to do is to, you're not that good at it, but you enjoy practicing and you enjoy getting better at it, and it's fun for you, but you're still not great at it, that's your hobby. Suppose you you try really hard at something and you're not that good at it, but you try to get help, you get tutoring, you go to your teachers, you go to your friends, you try to get help, you're not interested in it, and you're still not that good at it, forget about it. This isn't what you're going to be doing in your life. Take advantage in high school of knowing just enough. Just enough. Like for me, that's physics. I think physics is amazing as far as it changes the universe, right? But I don't really like physics problems. But if I went home to my girlfriend's father, who's an engineer, I would know enough not to say, do you drive a choo-choo train? Right? Know enough to exist in society, but let it go, because that's where the anxiety comes in. When we tell people they have to be good at everything. And what your teachers and administrators told me is that your students will not do things like take art or music because it's not rigorous enough, and they're worried it's not going to look good on their resumes. And that means that they are not learning the juice of life. They are not learning how to express themselves, which ultimately is going to make them successful later on. Because who's going to be emotionally well? The people who are going to be emotionally well are the people who are going to not keep everything inside and know how to express themselves through writing, through art, through music, through dance, through poetry. And yet our kids are terrified of doing this? It scares me. So, we're going to skip that. We just have a few minutes left. Coping and stress. I just want you to know the message I gave to your kids. And coping and stress is an hour talk. I just want you to get an idea of the flavor in 5 minutes of what I conveyed to them. Because if we just got if I just went out there and said, by the way, what you're thinking is going to create a lot of stress and undermine your long-term success, people are going to be, thank you very much, oh my God. Right? So you've got to be able to give the other half of the message. when you are stressed, this is how you deal with it. You also have to talk about the message as I began with you, which is when you're stressed, it's because you care. Congratulations for caring. Congratulations for caring. So, coping. Resilience at its core is about learning to cope with life's inevitable stressors. And we're going to do our greatest good by raising a generation of kids who knows how to cope. Here's the motto. Stress is incredibly uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable it makes you sweat, it makes you smell. It makes you not be able to think clearly. And there are positive ways of dealing with it and there are negative ways of dealing with it. And everything that you fear an adolescent doing is a negative coping strategy. Whether it's sex out of the context of a healthy relationship, whether it's fighting, whether it's cutting, whether it's bullying, whether it's eating disorders, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, these things work fantastically. They really, really do. However, they destroy your life. So what we want to do is raise kids with a wide repertoire of positive coping strategies so that the path of least resistance is right there. So when they are stressed, they can move in another direction. Before we get into a stress reduction plan, we have to be able to find the stressor. We have to basically, this is cognitive behavioral therapy on one slide. All right? Hey, this thing that's bothering me, can it shoot my face off? Because if it's not the real deal. Hey, this thing that's bothering me, how am I going to feel in a week? How am I going to feel in a month? How many of your mothers taught you something like, always say to yourself, this too shall pass? Right? Right? Know when something's temporary. Next, even for those of us who are particularly crazy, when good things happen, we go and say, oh my God, I'm going to lose it. It was just luck. I didn't deserve it. I have to pay for this good luck. Stop. Maybe you did get lucky. Take it. Maybe you deserved it. Next, we have to come up with coping strategies that teach kids how to engage problems, but also disengage from the problems. If you don't teach kids how to disengage from problems, they will find alcohol and drugs, which have been destroying cultures for 6,000 years at least. All right? We also have to teach them how to deal with their emotions, but we also have to have them deal with problems. Because if you only deal with the emotion, the problem's right there to bite you in the butt a minute later or an hour later. So you need both. All right? So this is a plan that is a 10-part plan. This is my plan. It comes out of the American Academy of Pediatrics. First thing we want to do, first three things are problem focused. We have to teach kids how to make the problem manageable. As long as you see a problem as a mountain, then you are never going to imagine getting to the summit. You're never going to imagine circumnavigating around it. You're going to go out and never do this, and you fall at the base and say, I can't. We who work with the most marginalized kids, Laurel and I, what we do is when we work with kids, we help them to break these mountains into hills. Because if you learn that all you have to do is step up on the first hill, then the mountaintop doesn't seem so far away, life is manageable. And if you teach people that these hills are made up of dirt and rocks, and all you need is the emotional shovels to be able to deal with them, you can manage anything. Next, you have to teach kids how to avoid problems. Because the man who wins every fight is the man who never shows up. You got to teach them how to triage, how to know when they've got to use their energy and when they don't. We also need to teach them how to let some things go. They've got to learn to conserve their energy. If we make kids think they have to be good at everything, then they also think they have to solve every problem. Well, you cannot solve every problem. You have to conserve your energy. And on the walls of every recovery program in the country, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. If you ask people who have been through the hardest times in life, this is what they know. My mother-in-law is one of two survivors left of the first transport into Auschwitz. She was there for 3.5 years. She literally saw her family put in ovens. All right? You ask her how it is that you survive, and we still have the capacity to love. She says you figure out what you can change and you fight like hell. You figure out what you can't change and you let it go, or they own you. This is a powerful lesson to teach kids. Next, we have to teach kids about the power of exercise, because the bottom line is stress is about feeling like the tiger's chasing you. And if you do not run, if you do not exercise, then you feel like the tiger is still there lurking somewhere. You haven't burned up your adrenaline. Your adrenaline goes through your body unused and confused, and you still feel like you're under attack. That's what anxiety is. Anxiety is wondering, is the tiger there? Is it there? Where's it coming from? When you exercise, you are able to burn that off. but you can't always exercise. So you also have to have relaxation skills so you can stand in place and essentially through deep breathing or finding your happy zone, you can get out of a situation emotionally. Nutrition, important. Sleep, important. We've got to teach kids how to withdraw in a healthy way from negative thoughts and feelings. And the best way scientifically to do this is reading a book. When you read a book, you are visualizing the panorama, imagining the sounds, imagining the smells, and feeling the feelings. There is no room for anything else. But sometimes you have to do the hard work. You have to do the hard work and be able to really manage your emotions, organize your emotions, and release your emotions. We've got to teach kids to pick something. We don't need them to have 7 art specialists and 15 writing. We don't have to do that. That's what we're doing is making them crazy. But at the same time, they need to know that whether it's going to be prayer or laughing or crying, whether it's going to be writing or talking or poetry or dance or rap, I need to have a way that says, do you want to know how I feel? Here it is. It's not inside of me chewing me up. I have been able to release it. And then finally, we have to have kids be contributing to the world. We do not need to send them to Botswana to teach them how to contribute to the world. You have enough problems right around the corner. Why does this matter so much that every kid gives service? Because remember, the ultimate act of resilience is to turn to another human being and say, brother, I need a hand. What is it that's going to allow you to do that without shame or stigma? What is it that's going to make you understand that there's not pity in the room? It is when you have served. When you have served, you learn that it feels good. And what that means is that ultimately, when we are all 120 and someone will be taking care of us, rather than feeling like that person is pitying me, that I'm going to be able to say, that person chooses to serve much as I have. They're going to get the same pleasure by being able to support me as I have given to other people. It is immunization for the worst of times, but it's more than that. All teenagers are held to low expectations. All of them are seen as thoughtless and reckless and, the problems. And if you are a person of color, then you walk down the streets and people are afraid of you. This is poison to their development, toxic to their resilience. When they're answering the fundamental question, who am I? And the answer is, I am the kind of person who people hold to low expectations. So when we have kids contributing, helping the lady across the street, what happens, or helping the neighborhood, or cleaning up the lakes, then what happens is these kids, all of our kids, will be surrounded by thank yous rather than condemnation. And when human beings are surrounded by thank yous and gratitude, they find meaning in their lives. So very briefly, when we think about stress, we create round, rich human beings who are prepared to live and to thrive. Not so that they can get into college and look at life as a sprint, but so that they can really be human beings who can make a difference in the world. Thank you, guys.
We've gone a little later than usual, but Dr. Ginsburg doesn't have an appointment until 9 o'clock. So we'll take out that at school. But if you have to leave because it is 8:35, by all means, sneak out. But otherwise, we've got plenty of time for questions and answers. So we can stick around with those two. So if no one has one after that, then let's see really learning about the place. I can put it on another doctor in the room to ask you a question.
Figuring out who you are as a teenager is a learning experience. We have teenagers in our lives start writing who we need. What is the language
I would actually, if you're a teenager who's actually found a passion, I would actually congratulate them. Okay? Because there's no, I knew what I wanted to do when I was a teenager, okay? So I just knew I wanted to work with kids and social justice. And then my father knew I wanted to be a doctor. But the point is that I wouldn't say, no, you couldn't possibly decide. What you want to do is, so support them to be pruning as well. Because if they found their passion, but they're existing in this broader culture that says you have to be good at this, and this, and this, and this, then they might be experiencing anxiety because they're not doing this, and this, and this. So one of the concepts that we have to change the way we think is kids do not quit things. Kids are pruning. Kids are trying to figure out what is the shoot that is going to rise. And this is actually consistent with brain development. Brain development in adolescence, you're losing lots of brain cells because they're becoming more efficient, more organized, and working. The brain is pruning. So we're going from one that's like a furry bush to like an oak tree. That's good and healthy. And what we want them to do is to also understand. So if your son is like that, I would say, I am so proud of you. You may want to go in this direction or that direction, but if they're like, but I still have to do this, well, no. Not if you really know what you want to do. All right?
So I'm just here to offer so many ideas of shared policies. And the strong is most likely the physical. I speculate probably not 100% those actions.
So first of all, I'm devastated by your assumption. And not every word I say is dripping with wisdom has been incorporated. I don't know the answer to that. What I know is that if we can, kids, you were in one of the groups, one of the assemblies? Okay. So the kids definitely embraced it overall. What they feel like is, but does this little man understand my reality? That I go home and my parents still judges my success by whether or not I get into Stanford, which by the way will mean that 96% of your kids will fail, not the way you want to go. Okay, not the way your admissions crew thinks. Okay? So that's where the ambivalence is. For example, yesterday morning I met with the Child Success Group and I asked the kids, I said, so tell me what you're going to struggle with. And this kid said to me, here's the problem. I want to believe everything that you're saying to me, but what I know is that getting into college gets me my first job, and my first job gets me my second job, and that changes my whole life. And I said, that's not true. Okay? I said, it gets me my first job, and then it goes from there. I said, you're halfway right, but let's back off. How long do kids stay at their first job? Do you know, this generation? 16 months, 16 to 18 months. What gets you your second job? Does your second job get you, does your second boss say, how did you do on the ACTs? Did you make captain of the lacrosse team my senior year? No. What gets you your second job is your first job. But not the prestige of the first job. It is your performance on the first job. It is the question that the second boss asks the first boss, tell me, does she get along with other people? Is she creative? Does she learn on the job? Is she coachable? These are the key variables. So the issue is, if we push kids so far for the sprint that then they're going to lose the marathon because they've given up their creativity, that's the problem. If on the other hand, you can feel good about yourself, be a high achiever, not a perfectionist, and go to an IB, that's fine, I have no problem with that. So, the one message as an institution that I believe is that this idea of thinking of yourself as a 35. With your teenagers, what I do in a healthy way is try to leverage their righteous indignation. In public health efforts, in creating social change for teenagers or behavioral change, the thing that works best by far is not telling kids what they're doing wrong. Not telling kids what's dangerous. If you tell them what's dangerous, they choose to do it. Okay? It is leveraging their righteous indignation. I want them to say, I am stressed, I am unhappy, I am not liking myself sometimes, and that's not reasonable. I will not be a victim of a society that tells me who I need to be. So that's what I'm trying to leverage. With all of that said, the one line going from school to school that I have found kids, if a school calls me later, I hear from an email a year or two later, it's this is not a real tiger. Because if you understand what's a real tiger and what's not a real tiger, you can lower your stress at any time. All right? And you're not going to go blank on the exams, et cetera, et cetera. long-winded answer to your question, okay? But I'm still devastated. I can't get here. Yeah. Yeah, can I give a 5-minute answer to that? Is that good for the thing? So the first thing is that ADD is not a disease. It is a different kind of brain. It is a kind of brain that is exactly why I am so successful. All right? We all come from the jungle. You gotta remember that. We are all 50,000 years ago were in the jungle. How do people survive in the jungle? They eat. How do they eat? They hunt. Imagine there being 20 people going into the jungle, and everybody is focused entirely on the deer. There's the deer. Everyone's tracking the deer and focused entirely on the deer. What happens to the men or women? Well, no, they'll probably get the deer. The deer's probably very, very dead. They're going to eat the deer. But what's going to eat them? The lions and the tigers and the bears, which means that you need some lookouts in every hunting party. Right? Right? What's the best definition? Squirrel. That's the best definition. All right? And so when you needed a guy like me, not because I could like track the deer, because I want to get bored, but dang, I'm not going to miss the marauding villagers, and I'm not going to miss the tigers or the wolf pack. You needed me alone. The problem is that schools are designed for deer hunters. So the first thing is, what is my biological job? My biological job, my brain is wired to my whole physiology. My biological job is that I'm a lookout. That's what I am. And therefore, exercise is incredible. Morning exercise is incredibly important to me. Because morning exercise allows my physiology to say, hey, the village is safe. I've looked around, and I can think differently. All right? I also focus on the right kind of nutrition, because my brain only exists on sugar, so I want to have, oh, by the way, best book on the exercise, all this stuff is in my books, but if you really want to read the book, it's Spark by Ray. Spark. It will show you the power of exercise to depression, to anxiety, to school performance, and to ADD. Next, I'm going to eat a mostly high-protein diet, especially in the mornings, so that my body creates, through the process of gluconeogenesis, meaning it creates its own glucose and puts it out in a steady line. If I eat sugar pops for breakfast, and I crash, the next is I'm going to sleep as well as I can. When I do all of that, the next thing I'm going to do, there's mixed evidence on what I'm about to say, but I'm going to take fish oil. Why? Because it does no harm. And then I'm going to get organizational skills. Because what I lack is executive function. What I lack is a file cabinet, right? To be able to say, this, I'm going to be going for the shiny ball. Which means, like, for me, I have a research assistant who has a different kind of brain. She knows me incredibly well. I'm great at coming up with large ideas. And she's the one who says, and you just told them this, and you told them this, you got to do this first. So we teach kids organizational strategies. When we've done all that, then we use medicine. However, and you're going to use less medicine if you've done all that. However, if a kid needs confidence to begin the other processes, you can start with medicine. And then do the other processes in tertiary medicine. Okay. Next question? Can I back up one point? The most important thing, man, is that your child does not, the person who asked the question, is that your child not thinks that themselves is broken. So the first thing that I want is for that child to Google the question, what's good about having ADD? Google that question and come up with all the websites that will talk about all the uber, highly successful people who do better in the workplace because of this brain. The other thing is I got myself a standing desk. Oh my God. 30% efficiency for $400. I go like this, and my brain's on again. These guys, they move the podium. Could you imagine me having given you the talk, standing behind like this? Could you imagine? Right? Go.
How do you ways to navigate communicating with students? We know that there's something going on feeling overwhelmed.
So the challenge for you is to not believe that this is about you. You may or may not be part of the problem. I don't know you, okay? If you said, don't ever bring home a B+ to this house, you're part of the problem. But my guess is you're not. But what I guarantee you is you're part of the solution. I guarantee you. What's beautiful about this event is that you can actually say to your kids, hey, the little man who talked to you, what do you think about it? And I've actually been stopped by literally a couple dozen families who have told me that this conversation began. In the book, Raising Kids to Thrive, which I co-wrote with 500 kids, co-wrote with my daughters when they were 17, they synthesized the views of 500 kids. Because of Alana, my daughter, she asked this question. She said, Avi, suppose a parent reads this book and they want to change their focus or reach out to their kids about it. How do they do it? And I said, wow, let's add that to the book. And the last third of the book is entirely about how do you start this conversation. How do you start this conversation so there's no shame or stigma, so that the kid's going to understand where you're coming from. The last chapter of the book is you hand it to the kid, and it's written just for kids. This is how you talk to your parents about these subjects. Okay? With that said, it starts with no shame or stigma. It starts with love. It starts with acknowledgement that there's no guilty party here, that they are victims, and that they need more than anything for you to understand. You need more than anything for them to understand that your love is without condition, and that you are overwhelmingly proud of who they are, and what they produce is very secondary to you. And if there's anything that anyone else is suggesting, they don't know you. And if they believe that you conveyed something else, I apologize, because that's not what I meant to do. That was the apology piece. I'm also caught on a treadmill. And I'd love to reverse that, but I can do it best with your guidance if you tell me what to do. Okay? Anybody else?
Plenty of schools similar, have the ability to mold and change. So don't you think that see some of the public schools show what success there, or that's we are
So, America is falling behind. America is falling behind for two reasons. One is that we are still knowledge-based instead of creative-based. However, we are also more creative than the rest of the world. Okay? The anxiety about America falling behind is falling mostly on the parents who care so much about their kids' success. Kids like the Blake, parents like the Blake School, and what's happening is that we are pressuring our kids beyond measure and actually hurting them very dramatically, because we think we are responsible for America falling behind. The reason America is falling behind is that we have an unjust, inequitable education system. The reason America is falling behind is not because of the Blake School dudes. It's not like if your kids do not get into Dartmouth or Stanford, America's going to fall behind. America is falling behind because we are not educating the kids in the inner city. We are not educating the kids on the reservations. We are not educating the kids in Appalachia, because America has a system that it believes that it is reasonable to allot educational resources based on parents' real estate values. And as long as America thinks that this is fair, then the kids who need the most resources will have the least, and America will fall behind. This is what I most care about. All right? Thank you for allowing me to bring that up. That's the truth. Can we make inner city kids successful? Yes. What are we going to do? We start by educating them. Second, we understand what is happening. What is happening is intergenerational historical trauma. That is what is happening. And as a result, parents are demoralized themselves, and they don't have the wherewithals to be able to do what they need to do for their kids. We can teach this. We can stop oppression. We can address things like racism, economic, social injustice, historical trauma. We can help people understand that the most important thing in a child's life is love. That you do not need financial resources, it's love. Can I give you 5 minutes on this? Yes? So here's what we know about childhood trauma. What we know about childhood trauma is that if bad things have happened in your childhood, meaning you've been neglected, you've been abused, you've grown up in domestic violence, one of your parents has been incarcerated, we know that that changes the whole life trajectory you have. We know that it makes you more likely to get divorced, to try to commit suicide, to use drugs. We know that. We know it makes you more likely to be obese. We know that it makes you more likely to get the common cold, to get cancer, diabetes, heart disease, strokes. We know that if you've been abused as a child, that it makes you more likely to get osteoporosis, brittle bones. Knowing this, if we can ever think beyond one congressional cycle, will change the world. Let me show you what is going on physiologically. When there is an acute stressor in my life, meaning there is a tiger, there is a man coming to me in a bullet, then adrenaline goes through my body. And when adrenaline goes through my body, then I have to be ready to jump at any time. Right? But if it is an acute event, I run away and I'm okay. But if that stressor in my life is not a man with a bullet or an acute tornado, that stressor in my life is my daddy in my bedroom, it's my mother being beaten, it's racism in the streets, or it's war, then I need to be prepared to jump at any moment. Do you get that? I need at any moment, never know when the problem is going to happen, to be able to jump. What does my blood pressure need to be, high or low? High. What hormone is the hormone of chronic hypervigilance that keeps my blood pressure high? Cortisol. Cortisol makes me feel like there's a tiger there, it could be anywhere. And as a result, what happens is that my blood pressure stays high. To keep my blood pressure high, my set points change in my life. Like I eat more salty foods, I eat more fatty foods, and that leads to all the other problems we talked about. If you go to the CVS and you have to put, and you have a rash, what do they tell you to put on it? Cortisone, because it is a hormone that also suppresses your immune system. When you have been bathed in cortisol your entire childhood, then what happens is that your immune system doesn't work. As well, if your immune system doesn't work as well, don't be surprised if you're going to get cancer and lupus. This is amazing that we know it. It's a unique opportunity. We've never understood this before. So, now, there's a magical unless, which is where I come into this movement. The unless is unless you have a loving adult alongside you. If you have a loving adult alongside you, no matter what the outside circumstances are, or even if your daddy is doing bad things to you, but your grandmother is watching out for you and trying to protect you, then what does that mean? Those kids, if you have that loving protection in people's lives, those kids end up looking a lot more like everybody else, and it mitigates all of the disasters of trauma. So everything I've said so far is a fact. Now this is Ginsburg theory. Ginsburg theory means that this has not been proven, but it makes sense to me. What I think is going on is that when I believe there's danger in the world, then when my grandmother is sitting next to me saying it's going to be okay, I can borrow her hypervigilance. As opposed to me being ready to jump at any moment, I can borrow her hypervigilance. And when I borrow her hypervigilance, I am borrowing her cortisol, and I don't need to map my own. That is the power of love. That is the power of human protection. And if you want to know what I really do in the universe, what I really do in the universe is try to teach professionals how to love kids in a safe and boundary way. That's what I do. Because when parents can do it, it's awesome. But when they can't do it, they need other people to pick them up. The lesson that I gave your teachers yesterday, because I guided teachers all up on trauma-informed care, the lesson I gave them is you were the most powerful people in the universe. Because for those people who don't have parents who know what to do, you're the ones who are going to give them that sense of protection, and you will change their entire life trajectory. Not what I expected to talk about here, but thanks for bringing it up. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Ginsburg, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. Keep an eye peeled for the announcement